My name is Evelyn Hart, 29 years old, an art lecturer at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. For more than a year, I had been quietly planning the wedding of my dreams with Grant, the man who never raised his voice, who listened as if every word I said mattered. If you're hearing my story, please support by subscribing, liking, and sharing this channel. What I'm about to tell you is not just about weddings. It's about family, betrayal, and finding the strength to rise again. That evening, I drove the hour north from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, carrying something precious in the back seat. The wedding dress I had just picked up from the seamstress. It was simple satin, embroidered with olive branches, a quiet nod to resilience, Grant's favorite word for me. I couldn't wait to show my parents. The moment I pushed open the front door, the sound hit me first. Laughter, music, the clink of glasses. I froze. Balloons floated near the ceiling, gold letters strung across the living room spelled, "She said yes." My father popped a bottle of champagne, foam spraying across the hardwood floor. My mother stood in the corner, phone raised, recording everything as though it were a royal event. And at the center of it all, under the chandelier I'd grown up staring at, stood my younger sister, Sabrina, in a white cocktail dress that shimmered like glass. She twirled, champagne flute in hand, basking in applause. For a second, I thought maybe I had stumbled into some strange dream. Then her eyes found mine. She smiled, bright, unbothered, like I was just another guest, not the sister who'd spent months planning her own May wedding. "Evelyn," she called, voice high with excitement. "Isn't this crazy? Derek and I are engaged." The room erupted again in cheers. I clutched the garment bag tighter. My chest felt hollow, as if someone had reached inside and taken something essential. I tried to smile, but my lips trembled. "When did this happen?" "Last week," Sabrina replied, raising Derek's hand for everyone to admire the sparkling diamond. "We wanted to tell the family in person, make it special." Special? The word stung. I had dreamed of sharing my engagement quietly, meaningfully, only to watch hers explode like fireworks in front of me. My mother lowered her phone just long enough to say, "Isn't it wonderful, sweetheart? Such a perfect match." I wanted her to look at me, to notice the dress in my arms, but her eyes slid right past me. I whispered, almost to myself, "I thought tonight was family dinner." Sabrina laughed, sharp and careless. "Well, now it's an engagement party. You don't mind, do you?" The crowd clapped again. I stood there, heat rising to my cheeks, the voices around me muffled. For years, I'd been asked to step aside, to be the bigger person. In that moment, it felt like the walls of my parents' house were closing in, suffocating me with history. I forced a nod, because collapsing in front of them would give Sabrina exactly what she wanted. My fingers dug into the fabric of my dress bag until my knuckles turned white. Inside, though, something shifted, a crack forming, quiet but undeniable. And as the night carried on with toasts and laughter, I stood in the shadows, already knowing this was not just Sabrina's night. It was the beginning of a war she didn't realize she had started. The clinking of glasses still echoed in my head when Sabrina, flushed with champagne and attention, clapped her hands to silence the room. I was standing by the wall, gripping the strap of my garment bag, trying to make myself invisible. She raised her voice like a performer commanding a stage. So Derek and I talked it over, and we didn't want to wait. "We're getting married on May 20th. The cheers exploded, louder than before. My stomach dropped. The words hung in the air like a verdict, cutting straight through me. "May 20th?" I repeated, my voice barely audible over the roar. Sabrina turned, her eyes glinting. "Yes, isn't it perfect? Early summer, lots of light, a great date for guests traveling in." She sipped her drink, unbothered. That's my wedding day," I said louder, my throat dry. The room went quiet for a beat. I looked to my father, hoping for backup. He just shrugged, twisting the cork from another bottle. "It makes sense, Evelyn. Sabrina's wedding will be bigger, more people, more family, more coverage. Yours is smaller, intimate. You can move it." Move it? Like a dentist appointment. I turned to my mother. She was adjusting the camera angle on her phone. "Mom? You know Grant and we booked the gallery over a year ago. The invites are designed. The quartet, the florist, she interrupted, her tone silky but dismissive. Sweetheart, don't be dramatic. You can just shift it a week later. Your wedding is personal, hers is, well, it's going to be an event. An event. As if love itself was only valid when it came with an audience. My fingers trembled around the dress bag. I'm not rescheduling, I said, steadying my voice even as my pulse pounded in my ears. Sabrina laughed, head tilted back. The sound was sharp, cutting. Why are you being so selfish? It's just a date. You don't own the calendar. Derek slid his arm around her waist, smirking at me like he'd already won. Babe, don't stress. Evelyn will figure something out. She's good at being flexible. The way he said flexible felt like a slap. Heat rose in my chest, but before I could speak, my father cut in again, his tone final. It's settled. Sabrina's wedding needs that date. Evelyn, be the bigger person, like you always are. The bigger person. The phrase that had followed me my whole life, when Sabrina crashed my car, when she flunked exams, when she stole my clothes and laughed in my face. Always my responsibility to bend, to forgive, to disappear. I swallowed hard, scanning the room. No one met my eyes. Not a single relative, not even an old family friend, dared to speak up. They all avoided me, complicit in silence. Sabrina lifted her glass, triumphant. To May 20th! To love, to family, to forever. The guests shouted cheers, glasses clinked, champagne fizzed. I stood frozen, the laughter swelling around me like water filling a room. For a moment, I thought I might drown. Inside, though, something shifted again. A cold clarity settled in my chest. I realized no one in that room would defend me. Not my parents, not the guests. If I wanted to hold on to the life Grant and I were building, I'd have to defend it myself. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my tears locked behind a brittle smile. Congratulations, I said quietly, though the word tasted like ash. Sabrina beamed as if she'd already forgotten the exchange, already moving on to the next photo, the next toast. But I hadn't forgotten. I would never forget. And as I slipped out into the cold Santa Fe night, the desert wind biting my cheeks, I knew this wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about survival, and I wasn't going to let her erase me again. The night after Sabrina's announcement, I barely slept. The echo of glasses clinking kept looping in my head, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smirk when she said May 20th. By morning, my body felt heavy, as if grief itself had settled into my bones. I tried to distract myself at the university. My students were presenting midterm portfolios, but while they explained brushstrokes and symbolism, my phone buzzed on the desk. An unknown Santa Fe number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something inside told me to pick up. Hello? My voice cracked. A pause, then a woman's voice, gentle, apologetic. Hi, this is Kara from Galileo Gallery. I'm so sorry to call like this. I sat straighter, heart pounding. Is something wrong with our reservation? Kara hesitated. There's been a change in booking. The space for May 20th has been reassigned. The words didn't compute. No, that's not possible. I signed the contract. We paid the deposit last year. I double-checked, she said quickly, as if trying to soften the blow. The new reservation was made yesterday, in person, under the name Sabrina Hart. My hand flew to my forehead, the classroom around me blurred, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the shuffle of sketchbooks, all of it faded into static. She can't just take it, I whispered. That date has been ours for months. Kara sighed. I understand, and I argued for you, but she offered to pay triple, and she told the director you'd canceled due to budget concerns. Rage surged, sharp and dizzying. Sabrina hadn't just stolen the date. She'd rewritten the story to make me look weak, irresponsible, poor. I swallowed hard, forcing steadiness into my voice. Thank you for telling me, Kara. When I hung up, my hand trembled so badly I dropped the phone. One of my students, a quiet sophomore named Maria, glanced up from her canvas. Professor Hart, are you okay? I forced a smile, hollow and thin. I'm fine. Just a call. But inside, I wasn't fine at all. Inside, something was breaking. That evening, Grant found me at home sitting on the couch, still holding the garment bag I hadn't had the heart to hang back up. He placed his sketch pad aside and lowered himself next to me. "What happened?" His voice was calm, steady, like always. I stared at my hands. "She took it. The gallery. She went there in person, paid them off. They gave her our date." He didn't flinch. He simply listened, thumb brushing the back of my hand as I poured everything out. The smug look on Derek's face, my parents' dismissal, Kara's apologetic tone, the lie about our budget. When I finally stopped, my throat raw, Grant exhaled slowly. "This isn't just about a venue, is it?" I shook my head. "It's about being erased. My whole life it's been, be the bigger person. When she crashed my car, when she lied to teachers, when Mom said she wished I was more like her, every time I had to shrink so she could shine, and now she's trying to erase even this." For a long moment, Grant was silent. He looked at me with that steady gaze, the one that always made me feel seen. Then he said quietly, "She hasn't erased you, not as long as you decide to stand." Tears pricked my eyes, hot and unrelenting. I pressed my palms against them, shaking. "But it feels like I'm always the one fighting, and she just wins." Grant's arm came around me, grounding me. "Winning isn't measured by noise, Evelyn. Sometimes silence carries more weight than a scream." I let my head rest on his shoulder, the fabric of his shirt damp from my tears. For the first time in days, I let myself cry. When the tears subsided, exhaustion wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, yet beneath it, a tiny ember still glowed. Anger, yes, but also defiance. Sabrina had stolen my date, my gallery, my place, but she hadn't stolen my will. And as I sat there beside the man who believed in me more than anyone ever had, I realized something. If Sabrina wanted to turn this into a war, then for once, I wouldn't walk away. The next afternoon, I drove back to Santa Fe. A part of me still believed maybe, just maybe, my parents hadn't realized how cruel this was. Maybe if I explained, they'd step in. The kitchen smelled of coffee and toasted bread when I walked in. My father sat at the table with the Santa Fe New Mexican spread wide, glasses perched low on his nose. My mother fussed with flowers in a vase, humming faintly. It looked so ordinary it made my stomach twist. "Dad, Mom!" My voice shook more than I wanted. "Sabrina bribed the gallery. She lied. They gave her my date because she threw money at them." Dad didn't look up from his paper. "You should have locked it down better. Paid more. You can't be surprised she outbid you." "Outbid me?" My voice rose. "This isn't an auction. It was my wedding. We signed a contract. I've been planning this for over a year." Mom finally turned, her smile thin as glass. "Evelyn, sweetheart, it's not worth all this drama. It's just a venue. Don't let it ruin your relationship with your sister." I stared at her, heat surging in my chest. She stole it. She told people we canceled because of money. She's erasing me in front of everyone. Mom's expression didn't waver. "She's excited. Can you blame her?" "She's cruel," I snapped. "And you're letting her be." The vase clinked as Mom adjusted a stem too hard. "Be the bigger person," she murmured, as if it were a prayer. Those words. Again. The words that had chased me my whole life. When Sabrina crashed my car at 19 and never paid me back. When she cheated on exams and I covered for her. When Mom whispered she wished I were more like her golden child. My throat tightened. "You don't even see me, do you?" Dad folded his paper slowly, finally meeting my eyes. His look wasn't angry, just dismissive. "You make too much of everything. That's why people side with Sabrina. She's easy. You're heavy." The word landed like a slap. Heavy. I stood there, shaking, waiting for something. An apology. A flicker of regret. None came. Only silence, thick and suffocating. Without another word, I turned and walked out. Back in Albuquerque, I sat alone in my apartment. The city lights blurred outside my window. On the coffee table lay my wedding sketchbook, the one filled with paint swatches, seating charts, doodles of olive branches curling around arches. 14 months of my heart pressed between its pages. I opened it, ran my fingers over the penciled notes, the dreams I'd poured in ink. Then I lit a match. The paper curled, blackened, flames swallowing the pages faster than I could breathe. I watched until the ashes collapsed into themselves, a heap of gray dust. My cheeks were wet, but I didn't wipe them. "I'm done pretending," I whispered into the quiet room, and for the first time, I almost believed it. The ashes were still warm in the tray when Grant came home that night. He paused at the doorway, his eyes moving from the faint smoke curling in the air to my red-rimmed eyes. He didn't ask. He never forced me to explain. Instead, he set down his keys, crossed the room, and held out his hand. "Come with me." I blinked. "Where?" "Just trust me." Something in his voice, steady, certain, cut through the fog that had wrapped around me all day. I let him pull me up from the couch. Minutes later, we were in his truck, headlights slicing through the Albuquerque night. Neither of us spoke. The city lights gave way to desert darkness, the sky wide and endless above us. My heart thudded with each mile, half from exhaustion, half from the unknown. After 40 minutes, Grant turned off the highway onto a narrow road lined with juniper trees. A tall wrought iron gate loomed ahead, its edges wrapped in ivy. A camera clicked as we pulled up. Without a word, the gate creaked open. "Grant," I whispered, "where are we?" He didn't answer. He just drove on, gravel crunching under the tires. The road wound upward until the trees parted, and I saw it, low, long, shimmering in the moonlight. A structure of glass and stone rising out of the hillside like it had grown from the land itself. My breath caught. This is yours?" Grant finally turned to me, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I designed it. I built it. I own it." For a moment, all I could do was stare. Grant, the man with rough hands and quiet eyes, the man who lived simply, who never flaunted anything, was telling me he owned the most breathtaking estate I'd ever seen. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" My voice was barely a whisper. He parked beneath a curved overhang and shut off the engine. "Because I wanted you to see me, Evelyn. Not what I have, not what I walked away from." I followed him into the house, my footsteps echoing softly on polished concrete floors. Lights flickered on, revealing warm oak shelves stacked with art books, soft leather chairs, and at the center, a reflecting pool glowing from beneath, its ripples painting the ceiling with light. I turned in slow circles, my throat tight. "It's like living inside a sculpture." Grant leaned against the doorway, watching me. "I grew up surrounded by entitlement, old money. Everything was about appearances, about status. I hated it. So I left, started from scratch under my own name. I kept this place quiet because I didn't want it to be a stage. I wanted it to mean something real." His words pressed against the rawest part of me. For days I'd been drowning in Sabrina's theater, in my parents' obsession with spectacle. And here was Grant, showing me a space built not for show, but for truth. I walked to the pool, staring into its dark water. My reflection wavered. For the first time, I didn't see someone erased. I saw someone standing. "Grant," I whispered, tears welling. "Why show me this now?" He crossed the room, taking my hands in his. "Because she can't erase you here. Because if you still want to marry me on May 20th, this place is ours. All of it. Every wall, every stone, every sunrise through this glass. It's yours." A sob escaped before I could stop it. I pressed my forehead against his chest, clutching his shirt. "You're not doing this to one-up her?" His voice was steady, almost tender. "No. I'm doing this so you'll never feel small again." I closed my eyes, letting the words settle into me like anchors. For so long I'd been bending, shrinking, being the bigger person until there was almost nothing left of me. But here, in this house carved from the hillside, I felt something return. Dignity. I lifted my head, meeting his gaze. Then let's make it unforgettable. Grant's lips curved into the first true smile I'd seen from him in days. He kissed the top of my head and whispered, "She has no idea what's coming." And for the first time since the nightmare began, I believed him. The morning after Grant revealed Sagewind Estate, I woke with a strange stillness inside me. For the first time in weeks, I hadn't dreamed of champagne toasts or Sabrina's smirk. The house on the hill had given me a breath of air I didn't know I'd been starving for. I was sipping coffee at a small cafe near campus, grading sketches between sips, when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made me freeze. Derek Blackwell, Sabrina's fiancé. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. The last thing I wanted was another performance. But curiosity clawed at me, and I answered. "Evelyn." His voice was low, strained. "I need to see you. Alone." My grip tightened around the cup. "Why?" "Because I know what Sabrina's doing, and you deserve to know too." Every instinct screamed trap, but something in his tone wasn't smug. It was tired. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him later that afternoon in Santa Fe Plaza, at a cafe tucked between adobe buildings where tourists rarely linger. When I arrived, Derek was already there, slumped at a corner table, no designer suit, no flashy tie, just a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes darted up when he saw me. "You came," he muttered. "5 minutes," I said flatly, sliding into the chair. "Say what you need to say." He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I didn't know she stole your venue. She told me you canceled, said you couldn't afford it, that you pushed the wedding to the fall." I snorted. "Of course she did. She's been spinning stories," Derek admitted, lowering his voice. "It's not just about the date. She's treating this wedding like a launch party, sponsorships, content deals, even a fake backstory. She told people we met in Bali. Evelyn, we met at a corporate retreat in Scottsdale. She said Bali sounded better for the narrative." I folded my arms. "Sounds like exactly the kind of theater she lives for." He leaned forward, desperation edging his voice. "That's not all. I found something. A burner phone she keeps hidden in her makeup drawer. She's been texting someone late at night, giggling when I ask. I don't know if it's cheating, but I know she's lying. And she—" He paused, pulling a small flash drive from his pocket, sliding it across the table. I stared at it. "What's this?" "Screenshots. Audio clips. Even a video or two. She admitted she wanted your date out of spite. Said, and I quote, 'She can cry later.' She laughed about bribing the gallery coordinator. She bragged that crushing you was part of the plan." My stomach turned. I didn't want to touch it, but my fingers closed around the plastic anyway. "Why are you giving this to me?" Derek's eyes, bloodshot and heavy, finally met mine. "Because I'm tired of being a prop. I know she doesn't love me. I'm just part of her brand. Maybe I should have walked away months ago, but I didn't. So if you're planning anything, if you want her to finally face consequences, I want in." I let the silence hang between us, the weight of the flash drive heavy in my palm. Part of me wanted to throw it back, to tell him I didn't need his pity or his betrayal of her. But another part, the part that had been burned again and again, knew this was proof. Proof no one could ignore. I slipped it into my bag. My voice was steady when I spoke. "If I use this, it won't just ruin her wedding. It'll ruin her." Derek gave a bitter laugh. "Then maybe she'll finally understand what it feels like to lose." He stood, buttoned his jacket, and left without looking back. I sat there alone, my coffee cold, my pulse unsteady. For years, I'd been erased by whispers, by shrugs, by silence. Now I had her voice on record, damning herself with her own words. And as the bells of the Plaza Church tolled the hour, I knew this war wasn't about survival anymore. It was about truth. I sat in my car outside the Plaza Cafe long after Derek had left, the flash drive heavy in my hand. The streets buzzed with tourists, the smell of roasted chile drifting from food stalls, yet all I could hear was Sabrina's voice in my head. "She can cry later." For years, I had cried later. In silence, in bedrooms, in bathrooms with the faucet running so no one would hear. Always the bigger person, always the shadow. Not this time. By the time I got back to Albuquerque, the desert sky had turned violet. Grant was on the porch, sketchpad resting on his knee, his face softening the moment he saw me. "You met him," he said, not a question. I sat beside him, dropping the flash drive onto the table between us. He gave me this. Proof. Recordings, screenshots, maybe even video. Grant studied it for a long moment, then looked at me. "What do you want to do with it?" I swallowed, my throat raw. Part of me wants to throw it into the river, pretend it doesn't exist, but another part, I clenched my fists. Another part wants to burn her kingdom to the ground. Grant set the sketchpad aside, leaning closer. "Evelyn, listen to me. She's been feeding on your silence for years. That's how she wins. You don't have to scream, but you don't have to be quiet anymore either." His words hit like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through me. I whispered, "What if it makes me like her?" "Petty, vengeful." He shook his head. "No, truth isn't vengeance. It's light. She's the one hiding in shadows, spinning lies. You'd just be showing people what's real." The air around us hummed with crickets. I stared at the flash drive, imagining the files inside. Her laughter, her sneers, the proof that my pain wasn't just paranoia, that I wasn't weak, just silenced. A storm of fear and anger twisted in my chest until I couldn't hold it anymore. She took everything, Grant. My date, my gallery, my parents' respect, and they all just let her. If I don't fight back, I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve to exist. Grant reached out, his hand warm over mine. "Then don't prove it. Claim it." That was the breaking point. Something in me snapped, not in defeat, but in release. I felt the old version of myself, the one who swallowed pain and wore polite smiles, fall away like ash. I exhaled shakily, nodded once. "Okay, we fight." Grant's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then we start tomorrow." For the first time in days, I slept without nightmares. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows of our apartment, golden and steady. I poured coffee, set my laptop on the table, and slid the flash drive into its port. Her voice filled the room, dripping with mockery. "She's soft. She'll cancel. That space should go to someone who actually matters." My hand trembled, but I didn't look away. Because this time, I wasn't just listening. This time, I was planning. The next morning, the air in Albuquerque felt sharper, almost electric. I brewed coffee and sat at the table with Grant, the flash drive still plugged into my laptop. Sabrina's voice echoed through the speakers, laughing, sneering, bragging. Every word was poison. But now, instead of piercing me, it sharpened me. Grant leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We can't just dump this online. It'll get buried, or she'll spin it. We need something cleaner, stronger, something no one can ignore." I nodded. "We show it where it matters most, in front of the people she's desperate to impress." Grant's eyes flickered with approval. "Exactly." He picked up his phone, scrolling through contacts. "I know a few friends at my firm, people who owe me favors. They can cut together a reel. Polished, professional, 6 minutes, not a second longer. 6 minutes, short enough to hold attention, long enough to devastate." That afternoon, 3 of Grant's colleagues met us at Sagewind Estate. They brought cameras, laptops, and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from being very good at keeping secrets. In the glass-walled atrium, we huddled around a glowing screen, sifting through Derek's files. Her voice hissed through the speakers. "She's soft. She'll cancel. That gallery should be mine." Her text messages glared across the screen. "Offer them more money. I want her to watch me take it from her." One of the editors looked up, shaking his head. "This isn't just arrogance. This is sabotage." Every clip made my stomach twist, but I forced myself to keep watching. For years, Sabrina had twisted reality, made me feel crazy for even questioning her. But now the truth was laid bare. It wasn't in my head. It was right here, undeniable. Grant squeezed my shoulder. Still want to do this? I met his eyes. I need to do this. For the next week, we built the weapon piece by piece. The editors layered in timestamps, visual receipts, audio clarity. They stripped away the noise until all that was left was Sabrina's cruelty, crystalline and unfiltered. Meanwhile, Grant and I crafted our own invitations, deep green envelopes sealed with wax. Each contained a private RSVP code. No hashtags, no flashy website, just an intimate number that unlocked directions to Sagewind Estate. Every guest on that list was handpicked: artists, curators, professors, old friends who had known me when I was invisible, and new allies who knew exactly what it meant to fight for your place in the world. Late one evening, as we sealed the last envelope, I leaned back, exhausted but alive. "She'll never see this coming." Grant smiled faintly. "She's too busy building her brand to notice you're building your voice." The next morning, the first ripple appeared, a blog post on Southwest Artline hinting at a secret wedding of a renowned architect at a private estate. It spread like desert fire, faculty whispers, DM rumors, old friends reaching out. And then, just as the whispers grew loud, Sabrina messaged me. "Hey sis, just so you know, we're dropping our wedding trailer this weekend. Thought I'd give you a heads up. Don't want you to feel overshadowed." I stared at the text, my lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. She thought this was still a game of aesthetics, of trailers and hashtags. She had no idea her own words were about to undo her. I closed my laptop, heart steady. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. The morning of May 20th dawned without clouds. The air in Tasuka Hills was cool, touched with the scent of juniper and desert blooms. From the balcony of the bridal suite, I watched black cars wind their way up the gravel drive, each one carrying faces I never imagined would stand for me. Professors, curators, artists I admired from afar, all of them stepping into the sunlight, brushing dust from their shoes, eyes widening at the glass and stone marvel Grant had built. Inside, the quartet tuned their strings, the notes floating like whispers through the atrium. My dress hung by the window, satin, simple hand-stitched olive branches curling across the bodice. No sequins, no veil, just me, unadorned but unshaken. Margaret Yates, the editor-in-chief of Modern Woman, arrived just after 11. I caught sight of her from above, her sleek black coat swaying as she shook Grant's hand. For years, Sabrina had begged for her attention. And yet, on this day, Margaret was here for me. I closed the window and pressed my palms together, whispering to myself, "You are not invisible. Not today." When the clock neared 2, the music shifted. A hush fell over the courtyard as guests turned toward the glass doors. My heart raced, but it wasn't panic. It was a strange weightlessness, as if all the years of shrinking had finally lifted from my shoulders. The doors opened. I stepped forward, the satin brushing against my legs, light catching on the olive embroidery. Faces leaned in, not out of gossip, but reverence. I saw tears glistening in Maria's eyes, a student who once doubted her worth but had found courage in my class. I saw my old professor, who'd pushed me when I wanted to quit, nodding with quiet pride. And then I saw Grant, standing beneath an arch woven with desert roses and olive branches, his gray suit cut simply, his eyes steady as if I were the only person in the world. My breath caught. Every step toward him felt like reclaiming ground I'd lost. When I reached him, his hand found mine. His palm was warm, grounding. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us was its own vow. The officiant began, voice carrying across the hills. We exchanged words we had written ourselves, raw and simple. Promises to see each other, to protect what was real when the world demanded performance. I could hear my own voice tremble, not from fear, but from the enormity of truth. When the ceremony ended, the applause rose, not polite, not obligatory, but thunderous, heartfelt. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like an afterthought. I felt like the center, not of attention, but of belonging. At the reception, the sun dipped low, painting everything gold. The atrium glowed with candlelight, glasses of wine casting shadows across the reflecting pool. Guests mingled, laughter and stories weaving into the air. I slipped away for a moment, stepping outside. The desert stretched around me, vast and quiet. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. Grant joined me, sliding his hand into mine. "You feel it too, don't you?" "What?" I asked softly. "That you're finally standing at your full height." I leaned my head against his shoulder, the warmth of him anchoring me. "For the first time, I'm not afraid of being seen." He kissed my temple. "Then this is only the beginning." We stood there in silence as the music drifted through the glass, the laughter of people who believed in us echoing in the distance. Inside, the stage was set. The video waited. But for that moment, in the soft twilight of Tasuka Hills, I allowed myself to be simply a bride, a woman who had clawed her way out of the shadows into the light. And as the stars began to pierce the sky, I knew. Whatever came next, Sabrina would no longer define me. This was my life now, my voice, my day. The reception was in full swing when Grant tapped his glass. The sound cut through the hum of conversation, pulling everyone's attention toward the head table. Candlelight shimmered off the reflecting pool, and I felt the air in the atrium tighten, expectant. Grant stood tall, tie loosened, a glass of red wine in hand. "Thank you all," he began, his voice warm but edged with something deeper, steadier. "Today isn't just about love. It's about truth, about standing tall when someone tries to silence you." A murmur rippled through the guests. I saw Margaret Yates lean forward in her chair, notebook balanced on her knee. A professor from my department tilted his head, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Grant's gaze found mine. His smile was brief, reassuring. Then he gestured toward the corner, where two of his colleagues manned the AV equipment. "My wife has carried weight that no one should ever have to carry. Tonight, with her permission, we're going to share the full story." The lights dimmed. A hush fell. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the first words when the screen lit up behind us. Sabrina's voice, crisp and unmistakable, filled the room. "She'll cancel. She always does. She's soft." Gasps erupted. Guests shifted, some whispering, others frozen. The video cut to text messages, bold white on black. "Offer them more money. I want her to watch me take it." A woman across the aisle pressed a hand to her mouth. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." The reel moved on. Audio of Sabrina at a dinner table, laughter slurred with wine. If she really loved that guy, she'd step aside. "He's just some artsy nobody. I'm the one with the real wedding." The words landed like stones in a still pond. Shock spread, faces hardening. Margaret Yates scribbled furiously in her notebook. I looked at the crowd, their eyes reflecting the screen's harsh light, and for once, I wasn't the one shrinking. They were watching her. They were hearing her. The truth I had carried in silence now thundered through the room. Then came the final clip, a hidden phone recording. Sabrina's voice, smug and vicious. "This is my year. She can cry later." The screen went black. Silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then applause burst forth, loud, rolling, uncontainable. Not polite claps, but a storm of hands slamming together, a wave of approval that rattled the glass walls. I felt my chest tighten, tears prickling my eyes. For the first time, people weren't applauding Sabrina's spectacle. They were applauding me, for surviving, for standing, for refusing to vanish. The doors slammed open. Every head whipped around. There she was, Sabrina, dressed in a designer gown, mascara streaking down her cheeks, her hair tangled as if she'd run straight from a fight. She froze at the threshold, staring at the screen still glowing black, at the guests turning toward her with eyes that no longer adored but judged. Her voice cracked. "You," she pointed at me, trembling with rage. "You did this to me." The room held its breath. I stood slowly, my legs steadier than I expected. "No, Sabrina. You did this to yourself." She staggered forward, her heels clicking on the marble. You wanted to humiliate me. You think this makes you better? You've always been jealous. Enough. The word cut through her rant. My mother. Elaine stood, her face pale, lips pressed tight. She'd always been Sabrina's defender, the one urging me to bend, to forgive. But in that moment, her voice shook with something different. Shame, maybe, or clarity. Sabrina Marie Hart, she said, using the full name reserved for the gravest moments. Leave. You've embarrassed this family enough. Sabrina's mouth fell open. Mom. Her father set his glass down with finality. Your sister has endured more than you'll ever understand. This is her day, not yours. The silence that followed was deafening. Sabrina's chest heaved, her eyes darting from face to face, searching for someone, anyone, to defend her. But no one moved, not even the relatives who once called her golden. Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head, muttering, "This isn't fair." Then she turned and fled, the doors slamming shut behind her. The guests exhaled, the tension shattering like glass. Margaret Yates stood, her voice carrying as she addressed me directly. Evelyn, thank you for letting the truth speak. Some stories need to be told. This one will not be forgotten. Applause rose again, softer this time, but warmer. I sat back down, Grant's hand covering mine, my heart still racing. For years I had dreamed of justice, but never believed it would come. Tonight, in front of everyone who mattered, it finally had. And though Sabrina's shadow still lingered, for the first time I felt the light reach me fully. The echo of the applause still lingered when the doors slammed shut behind Sabrina. For a moment, the atrium felt like it had exhaled, releasing years of tension in a single breath. But the silence that followed was not relief. It was reckoning. I stood near the head table, my pulse steady but my chest tight. My mother remained frozen where she had spoken those words. Sabrina Marie Hart, enough. Leave. Her hands trembled as she smoothed the hem of her dress, eyes darting between me and the guests who had witnessed everything. My father drained the last of his wine, setting the glass down harder than necessary. Well, he muttered, that's that. I turned to him, searching his face for something. Anger at Sabrina, pride in me, anything. That's what, Dad? His jaw tightened. Your sister embarrassed us, but did you have to make a spectacle of it? In front of all these people? The words hit harder than I expected. Even now, even after all the evidence, his instinct was to scold me for exposing her, not her for destroying me. You think I wanted this? My voice cracked. Do you have any idea what it took for me to stand up there and not vanish? She stole my date, my venue, my dignity, and you call this a spectacle? A few relatives shifted uncomfortably nearby, pretending to sip their drinks. No one stepped in. My mother's eyes glistened, but her tone was clipped, brittle. Evelyn, we only ever wanted peace in this family. Did it have to come to this? I laughed, sharp and bitter. Peace? You mean silence. You mean me swallowing every slight so Sabrina could shine. That's not peace. That's erasure. She flinched. For a second, I thought I saw regret flicker across her face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Grant placed a hand on my back, grounding me. Evelyn doesn't owe anyone an apology, he said firmly. His calm voice cut through the static like a knife. She protected herself the only way she could, by telling the truth. My father's gaze hardened on Grant. And you orchestrated this, didn't you? The video, the timing, all to humiliate her. Grant didn't flinch. No, Sabrina humiliated herself. We just stopped covering for her. The room was taut, every breath suspended. Then Margaret Yates stood, her presence commanding attention. Thomas, Elaine, your daughter deserves your respect. What I witnessed tonight wasn't humiliation. It was courage. Whispers rippled through the guests. My parents looked as if the ground had shifted beneath them. My mother opened her mouth, but no words came. I turned to them, my voice lower, steadier. I begged you to see me. All I ever wanted was to matter as much as she did. Tonight, I stopped begging. A hush fell again. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears, but she didn't move toward me. My father shook his head, muttering something under his breath about family loyalty, then walked out, leaving his chair scraping against the floor. I watched him go, my chest hollow but strangely light. For the first time, I wasn't chasing after them. Around me, the celebration slowly resumed, though quieter now, tinged with unease. Relatives who had once fawned over Sabrina avoided my eyes. A few, braver than the rest, approached to squeeze my hand, whispering, "Proud of you," before retreating quickly. My mother lingered near the exit, her shoulders rigid. She glanced back at me once, an expression I couldn't fully read. Regret? Shame? Fear? Then she turned and followed my father into the night. Grant slipped his arm around my waist. "You did what they never had the courage to do. You told the truth." I leaned into him, exhausted but unbroken. And now the pieces will fall where they may. As the music rose again and glasses clinked faintly in the background, I realized something. Families don't fracture in one moment. They crack over years under the weight of favoritism, silence, and small betrayals. Tonight had only made the fractures visible, and once they're visible, there's no going back. The morning after our wedding, the headlines had already spread farther than I imagined. Not the vows, not the ceremony, but the real. Architect's private wedding exposes family scandal. Influencer bride-to-be caught bribing venue, mocking sister. When the brand crumbles, Sabrina Hart's downfall. Each notification pinged my phone like a stone dropped into still water, rippling outward. I didn't even have to search. Links poured into my inbox from colleagues, students, even distant friends. By noon, Sabrina's PR manager issued a statement. "We were unaware of ongoing personal issues. Please pause all collaborations until further notice." I stared at the screen, stunned. Grant leaned over my shoulder, reading silently. "First domino," he murmured. Within hours, 3 sponsors cut ties, their press releases curt. "We value integrity above all else." By evening, 2 more had gone silent, removing her photos from their feeds as if she had never existed. I sat on the couch, phone buzzing relentlessly, watching the empire my sister had built. An empire of filters, captions, carefully staged brunch tables, collapse in real time. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt heavy. Grant handed me a glass of water, studying my face. "What are you thinking?" "That she'll hate me forever," I whispered. "That maybe this was too much." He shook his head. "Evelyn, you didn't destroy her. She destroyed herself. You just refused to hide it anymore." I sipped the water, my throat dry. He was right. But part of me still ached at the sight of her falling so far, so fast. By the second day, the influencer forums buzzed with speculation. Screenshots of her burner phone circulated, leaked through channels I hadn't touched. Former collaborators came forward with stories of manipulation, of late payments, of lies. One comment stood out, pinned on a thread that had already reached thousands. She spent years stepping on others to stay in the spotlight. Now the light is gone. My chest tightened. For so long, I had lived in her shadow. Now, for the first time, the shadow itself was fading. On the 3rd day, Sabrina's Instagram went silent. No more glossy countdowns, no choreographed reels. Her last post, the wedding trailer she'd dropped like a weapon, was flooded with comments that read more like indictments than congratulations. "You erased your own sister? This is cruelty, not ambition. Unfollowed, permanently." Her likes plummeted by 80% in less than a week. I scrolled through the chaos one last time before setting my phone down. "She wanted an audience," I murmured to Grant. "Now she has one, but not the one she imagined." He wrapped his arm around me, pulling me against him. "Let it go, Evelyn. Her collapse isn't your burden to carry." Still, the ache lingered, because as much as I wanted justice, part of me mourned the girl Sabrina once had been, the little sister I used to braid hair with who shared birthday cakes and whispered secrets in the dark. That girl was long gone, replaced by a woman who saw family as competition. By the 4th day, even her management dropped her quietly. An email leaked online. "We no longer represent Ms. Hart." It was over. The empire she had curated with ring lights and hashtags, years of relentless image building, had toppled in less than a week. And I, for the first time, wasn't the one left in ruins. I sat on the balcony of Sagewind Estate that night, desert wind brushing my skin, the stars endless overhead. Grant sat beside me, his hand steady over mine. "She tried to erase me," I whispered into the dark. "But she ended up erasing herself." Grant kissed my temple. "And you're still here. Stronger." For the first time, I believed him. 3 days after the last sponsor dropped Sabrina, the world around me finally felt quiet. The storm had passed, or so I thought. Grant and I had just returned to Albuquerque from Sagewind Estate. The evening air smelled faintly of rain, soft against the stucco walls of our apartment. I set down the grocery bags, humming to myself for the first time in weeks. That's when I saw it. A plain white envelope slipped beneath the door. No stamp, no address. Just my name, written in a rushed scrawl. My chest tightened. "Grant?" I called, but my voice was thin. He came from the kitchen, wiping his hands. I held up the envelope. "This was waiting for us." He frowned, took it gently, then handed it back. "It's addressed to you." I slid a finger under the flap. The paper inside was unlined, the handwriting jagged. Only one sentence. "This isn't over. You stole everything from me. Just wait." The room seemed to tilt. My pulse roared in my ears. Grant read over my shoulder, his jaw clenching. "It's her," I whispered. "It has to be." Grant's hand settled firmly on my arm. "She wants you rattled. Don't give her that power." But I was rattled. The words burned into me, sharp and venomous. This isn't over. After everything, the video, the fallout, the silence online, I had believed Sabrina was gone, buried under the weight of her own lies. But now, staring at the shaky letters, I realized she wasn't finished. Grant took the note, folded it once, and set it on the counter with deliberate calm. "Let her threaten. She has no stage left. We have truth, Evelyn. And the truth doesn't scare." I nodded, but deep inside a chill spread, because I knew my sister. She thrived in darkness, and even stripped of her spotlight, she was still dangerous. I turned to the window. Outside, the city lights blinked steady against the night. For the first time since the wedding, I felt the shadow return, not over me, but hovering close, waiting. And I knew the war hadn't ended. It had only shifted. The letter still lingered in the back of my mind, but Grant insisted we leave it behind. Literally. A week after the wedding, we boarded a plane bound for Florence. When the wheels touched down, the city greeted us with warm light, cobbled streets, and the hum of scooters weaving between centuries-old stone walls. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding my breath until I stepped into the Piazza della Signoria and smelled the roasted chestnuts from a street cart. For the first time in months, no one was watching me. No one was waiting for me to stumble. I was simply another traveler, hand in hand with the man who had refused to let me vanish. Our days unfolded like brushstrokes on canvas, mornings at small cafes, espresso served in porcelain cups so delicate I held them like treasure. Afternoons wandering through galleries, where Grant sketched the curve of a doorway or the tilt of a statue while I let myself get lost in the silence of art. Evenings on rooftops, the air filled with the scent of basil and tomato, our glasses of Chianti catching the last glow of sunset. One night, we climbed to Piazzale Michelangelo just as the sky turned pink. The Arno River glittered below, bridges arched like ribbons across its surface. Grant slipped his arm around me, pulling me close against the breeze. "You look lighter," he murmured, almost as if he didn't mean to say it aloud. I smiled, eyes on the horizon. "I feel lighter, like I finally put something down I didn't even know I was carrying." He kissed my temple, no words needed. And it was true. The weight of years, the shrinking, the silence, the endless call to be the bigger person, was gone. In Florence, I didn't feel like the girl who'd been erased. I felt like the woman who had chosen herself, who had survived the storm and found the sun waiting on the other side. One morning, while sketching in a quiet courtyard, Grant slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "Just so you know," he said with a grin. I opened it to find his drawing. Not of Florence, but of me, sitting in the sunlight with my hair pulled back and my shoulders unburdened. He'd written one word beneath the sketch: free. My throat tightened. For once, it wasn't about being somebody's sister, daughter, or shadow. It was about being me. As the church bells tolled across the city, I realized Florence wasn't just a honeymoon destination. It was a beginning. A place where, for the first time, I could imagine a life defined not by what I endured, but by what I created. When Grant and I returned from Florence, the desert air of New Mexico felt different, lighter, almost forgiving. The storm clouds that had hung over my life for months seemed to have dispersed, leaving behind a horizon I hadn't dared to imagine. I walked across the campus of the University of New Mexico, the familiar adobe walls glowing under the afternoon sun. Students waved, some of them faces I had taught through long semesters of doubt and quiet resilience. A few stopped to congratulate me, not just for the wedding, but for standing up. Their words startled me, but in a good way. For once, I was being seen not as Sabrina's quieter sister, but as Evelyn Hart, artist, educator, woman who had refused to disappear. Later that week, I sat in the dean's office, the hum of air conditioning low in the background. He leaned forward, sliding a letter across the desk. "We've seen what you've done," he said, eyes kind but firm. "Not just in your art, but in your courage. We'd like you to lead a new initiative, Director of Arts and Equity. Funding for mentorship programs, exhibitions, a real chance to shape the future for underrepresented voices." My throat tightened as I read the words on the page. A door I hadn't even known existed was opening, and for the first time I felt ready to walk through it. That evening, I sat at Sagewind Estate with Grant, the sun sinking low across the hills. He poured us each a glass of wine, his hand brushing mine. "So," he asked, his smile quiet, "what's next?" I looked out at the land, the wildflowers catching the last light, and let myself breathe. "What's next," I said slowly, "is finally living. Not surviving, not shrinking, just living." He clinked his glass against mine. "Two beginnings." "Two beginnings," I echoed, and for the first time the words didn't feel fragile, they felt real. Looking back, I realize now that my sister never just stole a date or a venue. She tried to steal my voice, my very place in this world. For years, I thought being silent made me stronger, that being the bigger person meant I was doing the right thing. But silence isn't strength. Silence is surrender. I learned that dignity isn't given by family or titles. It's claimed. It's the moment you say enough and refuse to let anyone define your worth. I learned that truth has its own kind of power, one that no spotlight or brand can outshine. And I learned that love, real love, isn't about rescuing or fixing, but about standing beside someone until they find their own ground. To anyone listening, don't wait to be erased before you decide to rise. You don't need permission to take up space, to speak your truth, to choose yourself. If my story resonated with you, let's keep this conversation alive. Hit like, subscribe, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below about a time you chose yourself. Your story matters. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise.